I met a new friend.
Real or caped critiquers.
Caped critiquers.
Would you like to talk about this friend?
Said to follow him.
Follow him.
So this was a confusing movie. I did like it a lot, but how would you personally summarize this movie, or at least the ending?
I feel like the ending is like probably the part that's most up to interpretation, just because it's like where everything culminates.
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost easier to summarize the movie not counting the ending yet. It's just like a kid that.
But it all funnels to that ending scene.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, and you don't know
Kids
that
that
until
just, like,
until you're
fucked
in it, but it all funnels to that.
Yeah.
You know. So I mean, I've heard stories and listened to stuff now. First time I ever saw this movie.
Same.
You know, and I always it looks.
He's been trying to get me to watch it forever.
You know, he's mentioned it to me a while back as well.
I've watched it 28 times. I've probably watched 6 podcasts.
Yes.
I made him watch
42 videos about it.
You know? So I see why, and not just because Gretchen mentions it in the movie, but I see why you see it as a superhero movie, because it has all the elements of the buildup of almost a superhero origin story, and then he culminates into saving the world, actually the ending of a world.
I mentioned to Jack, like, this movie even almost like ties into like the current multiverse.
There's no
trend,
doubt.
and
Yes.
like there's kind of like an incursion that happens.
That's what it is. Him being saved.
I feel like a fucking dumb nerd for saying
I-
that. Like,
but it's true,
Phil
but him-
Bro's like a fucking
Him
comic
being
guy.
saved was the incursion.
Yeah, him not dying by the Jedi.
Well, yeah.
That was the incursion, and he has to go save it and sacrifice himself
Correct
to do
it.
so.
Yeah.
You know, but also people say that he's a mental ill kid, and this was his build up to suicide. You know, I've heard that story as well. But it was an accident that killed him. But then in the end, he knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like
I go with the superhero trend.
when you go
myself.
with like the whole thing, we're like, oh, it's all in his head. All these events are actually in his, like, it just takes away from the movie. And like I think with how much this one is playing with it's in his head, like you're stupid if you think it is. You know?
I don't think it's all in his head. And the scenes of the people waking up out of dead sleeps at the end of the movie is. They were all part of it. And I think the only one, because he made me watch both versions of this. The one that you guys watched and then the
theatrical.
director's cut.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay? 2 totally different movies.
Really?
Just subtle changes just changed the whole movie. But you got more out of it because they dive more into that book that he gets from the teacher, played by Noah Weil.
Look at that and remember a name.
Didn't you? Yeah, wow.
Shit.
I just called him the guy from ER.
The guy from me, but that's they started with him, and I knew who he was, and
Fucking
he's
love
actually
that
pretty
actor.
big.
He was great in this movie.
He was
He's
really
probably
good in this
my
movie.
favorite, like,
All
side.
the actors were really pretty good in this movie.
Except for Drew
I thought-
Barrymore.
There's a great
Yeah,
cast.
Drew Barrymore
seeing-
was very flat.
Yeah, I loved
Yeah.
seeing the young Drew Barrymore,
Yeah.
the
She
young
was the
Patrick
producer for the
Swayze.
movie.
And she was a producer. This movie wouldn't have been off the ground if it wasn't for her. Some things in it touched on her, and she really took off with it. You know, and a lot of it had to do with being exploited as a child actress, because that's and they didn't really dig too deep into the sparkle motion, but they're exploited kids, you know, basically. But they didn't go to the dark side of that too much, though. They touched on it later on with the Patrick Swayze character.
Yeah.
You know, but the whole superhero thing. I mean, I get it.
Even his name, Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko. I
He's
mean,
a
she
Stan
touches
Lee
on it.
type
Yeah.
of name.
So if you think of that, though, there's a scene after they're in the hotel room. The father's talking about a kid who apparently got killed on the way to the prom. He was sort of that same thing where he had that weird name. And
Frankie Fiedler.
yeah, and he died, and everybody said he was doomed or destined to that was going to happen to him. You know, so this is basically what happened to Donnie Darko. It's the same thing. He was the same. You know, they're trying to touch that. He also had that, as well as grandmother death, or whatever they call
Grandma
her.
Death, yeah.
Grandma death.
My death.
She was also the same thing. Donnie's real world is her incursion world.
Well, that is just
Pretty
a
much,
theory.
it's a theory.
Like
but
that.
it pretty much.
You're kind of recapping like a video I made you watch a little bit too much here.
Yeah. No, but
Like
even
that is just a theory.
Yeah, but even going back and reading some other things about in that book, because you can go read passages in that book elsewhere. That's what it basically.
Yeah, I think
says
if
in
you
that
ask
book.
20 people about the movie,
Yeah.
you're going to get 20 different.
Yeah, it is.
viewpoints.
Well,
that
the
type of
theatrical, yes. If you watch the director's cut, it explains more because you see
Over-explains.
passages of that book.
I
But
feel
it's-
like
It's almost.
I wouldn't
35
like
minutes
the
longer.
director's cut as much as the theatrical.
The extra scenes are definitely like the best part of it, although like some of them just don't like make sense in the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say the theatrical cut is the way to go.
Yeah.
But tying back to the superhero question, I'd say it's not a total superhero movie, but like the themes are definitely there. And I think why I think of it as one is because it's kind of like a modern retelling of like Odin, you know? Because like it's just a guy being reborn in a time loop over and over again and like getting more powerful each go around, you know?
It's good.
Yeah. And I'd say like Frank is a version of Mimir, which is like a severed head that Odin carries around. Interesting stuff. I also wrote like powers that he has. So he put the axe through the bronze statue, so that's strength. Conjuration of water. The water main would not have like put out that much water if he didn't have like a power to manipulate that. Conjuration of fire. It showed him spreading the gasoline, but you never saw him light it. So just interesting.
And where'd the gas come from?
Yeah. I also put down mind control because everybody is subtly guiding / helping Donnie.
I'd say it's almost a superhero movie, like in the way that the Iron Giant is a superhero movie, where it's like there's definitely like some kind of themes of traditional superhero stuff woven into this, but it's very much like its own type of thing. And you're not like getting an actual superhero in tights type of thing. It's kind of just like this weird flipped on its head interpretation of like a hero.
Not all superheroes wear masks.
I didn't see any of that.
Yeah, same.
You don't think it's really any type of like hero thing going on?
Yeah, I think there's always that good and bad, good versus bad at some point, in every movie. Otherwise, we wouldn't be watching it. I think it was written so that we could all sit around and have 10 different views on it. Initially, I think even Hollywood had a hard time categorizing it. And I think if you look it up, it says something like sci-fi thriller or whatever it is.
It does, yeah.
But so that would put it closer to a superhero movie than an actual, drama, horror, whatever. I just seen it as a kid that had mucho mental problems, schizophrenia, whatever, and I think that we followed him through his normal existence until the day he died, but through his brain thinking of everything else that was going on around. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing was real. He's real, and this is just his view of how things operate or function in the world because he's got this mental illness.
It is interesting though because like he has never even met Gretchen then, like how would he even have thought all that up if he had never even met her?
True. No, I know. There's a lot of scenes. And
I do think that the time travel takes place. I feel like it's
you
hard.
think that was an actual...
Yeah, I do think he time traveled because it's almost like harder to prove that he doesn't. Because like, how would like he know of anything that happens after the day that he gets crushed? Or like, how would he even know that he's gonna get crushed?
How do you know that the things that happened after he got crushed actually happened?
But how would he even think of that stuff?
Because that's what people on psychedelics and...
Well, the thing is like it all stems from like even if it's fake, like fake surviving that jet engine falling into the room. Like how would he have ever even known that a jet engine falls into the room? And then like how do you create everything past that too? Is where
Well, none of us actually know what death is.
Yeah.
So, it could have been him already dead, looking back and creating. Like I said, it's just that kind of movie. It didn't do it for me. I remember I watched it a long time ago, rewatched it, most of it last night, and it just didn't do it for me. I love the shirt though. I do. I really love the shirt.
I feel like most of my questions, there's a good bit of questions there, but a lot of them do kind of stem towards the rabbit and Frank.
Yeah, that was me the whole time. Like, why is he just following him around constantly?
It's even more interesting, like after during the Mad World sequence, just like seeing him and just like all the bunny stuff that like is in his room.
And personally, to me, the movie was more of a time travel movie than a superhero movie or anything else.
Yeah.
It's like a supernatural.
I'd agree. There's definitely like some elements of hero stuff going on, but it definitely isn't a superhero movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost, it kind of gave me a little bit of especially towards the end when he knows that he's got to die. Ever watch Final Destination where they cheat death?
Yeah.
And then death is basically just constantly trying to kill him. This was kind of gave me that type of vibe where he's like, he knows he should be dead.
Yeah.
So then he finally realizes that just to save the people around him. I don't know. It was just very weird. I was very confused the whole time.
I'd say it's definitely not like the only thing that had to change was that he had to die. because like at the start of the movie, like Frank wakes him up.
Yeah.
So I think he also has to like do everything right, kind of like Groundhog Day a bit,
Yeah,
where like he has to
in a
do everything
sequence.
right so that in the final, like when I guess he comes out of it, like the original universe, like everything will be corrected or like correct itself, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's why like Jim Cunningham like weeping at the end too. In the new universe.
Why do you think he's weeping?
Because like, so there's something like weird where like in the website you can see like events that take place after the movie, and like apparently he like killed himself on the golf course. So yeah. I mean, I feel like you could take that away that like he was clearly maybe like gonna turn himself in or something at least, you know?
Well, him weeping at the end for me was like, yeah, this guy's a fucking crazy pedophile. That just, you know, his whole spiel is like, you're living this fake life and, you know, you got to be true to yourself and give up your fears. Well, you know, his reality is that he's a fucking crazy guy that wants to, like, you know, touch kids or something, and he just can't accept that. There's definitely a lot of like themes of coping and failing to cope in this movie.
Yeah.
There's also that, you know, God is good thing through the whole thing. You know, they even speak of the rabbit being God in some parts of this movie, you know, and or he does.
Yeah.
And, you know, they touch on that. I mean, going back to the sequence that he has to go through, even when they're in the basement at the end of the movie and the guys come out with the bullies, come out with the knives, his reaction is he does nothing to even save himself there. We find out later he has a gun. We don't even know that he took the gun from the house, the whole bit.
Yeah.
Why didn't he do something at that point? Because he knew this is part of the destiny.
Yeah.
I'm not going to die here. This is just part of it. I have to go through this to get to the end game. So he already knew at that point what had to be done. You know, that's why I think at the end he's in the bed, he's laughing because he knows that he's done it all and he's going to, you know, go back to the way it was supposed to be, even though it's his own death.
Yeah.
But is he still alive in this other, or is that timeline
Well, I don't know. I think it's more just like, I guess it's heaven, but like he's just like, he gets knowledge, I guess, you know? He just goes to a place with knowledge, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like Odin, again.
I do kind of agree more with Jack, because like at the end, when the sky opens up and he's sitting there, you know, where the movie begins, and he's looking out at the sky opening up, and he's just like, I'm going home.
Yeah, he's got peace, exactly.
Well, what was the budget for this movie?
I think like 8 million, maybe 3 million.
Yeah, because it's filmed, like, it's shot well, but it's like, you could tell that it doesn't look like a movie from 2001.
No, and you got a list of great actors and actresses in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, you got both the Gyllenhaals, you got Patrick Swayze, the
And-
daughter from The Graduate,
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore, the guy from ER, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Jack and I was speaking also. The dynamic of the Darko family was fantastic, and I think a lot of it had to do with the naturalism between the Gyllenhaals because they just work so well together. You know, that scene around the table, you know, when they're, you know, he calls her a fuck ass or something.
Yeah,
She says suck a fuck.
Yeah.
I just want, you know,
Yeah.
that was just so genuine, and it was an amazing little scene. Just a lot of great little scenes in this whole movie. I
Yeah,
thought.
I was Jack and I forced him to watch it with me last night, and I was kind of mentioning like so many of like the funny lines in this movie just feel like, you know, the writer team or directors, you know, just kind of inserting like weird funny conversations that they've had.
Yeah.
Like especially the Smurf
Mhm.
conversation.
That whole Smurf conversation was
Probably
hilarious.
my favorite scene in the whole movie.
That was hilarious.
I think even like there's a whole like thing about how on the commentary of the movie he talks about how like the fear and love like speaking out thing, like that's the thing that he wanted to do, you know, and like he never got to, so this is like his way of doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, just to back up to the whole Smurf scene, I mean, this is another stupid dad moment, but when I was in college, for Halloween once, I was Papa Smurf. And we had similar stupid conversations about Smurfs when I was in college. So I'm just throwing that out there. You can put this on the cutting room floor. But
Director's cut.
Yeah.
Now, who
But-
played the mom?
Don't
She was-
know.
McDowell?
She's familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was a big actress.
yeah, she was.
Can't name anything else.
Yeah,
she's
Mary
in, but I've seen her
McDonald.
before.
Mary McDonald.
Yeah. Yeah, she was really good. in
And we
this.
were looking at, I guess, Gretchen.
Yeah.
I didn't. I
Something
kept looking at
Malone,
her
yeah.
face, you know,
idea
really
where she
young.
was from.
But I kept looking at her face, going, "But I seen her somewhere else before." And then when we looked it up, I just seen her in Rebel Moon.
Oh, see, I didn't know her. And even the father, I've never seen him before, Holmes Osborne. But in the director's cut, there's some more scenes of him speaking with Donnie. And those were some good natural scenes as well. You know, remember outside, he's outside having the drink and Donnie comes home and they sort of touch on the mental illness stuff and, you know, how everything's going to be okay. But it was just the dynamic between the family just worked well. Like Jack said, they just like each other.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like one of those rare movies where the family actually loves each other. Even like the parents loving the kids, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where there wasn't that, even he called his mom a bitch and all, but still, it was, who hasn't called their mother a bitch, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a lack of love.
I mean, hey, that makes him a son of a bitch. So
True.
I did like that one scene though, where after he does that, she goes into the bedroom. She tells her husband, "Your son just called me a bitch.
You're not a bitch.
You're not a bitch,
bitching.
and you're bitching." And then that's it. He's just laying there.
Yeah.
But then he took his pill.
Then he took his pill.
Yeah.
There's a
know.
lot of scenes in this movie
And
that
then
kind
that's
of
where all the shit started.
just end.
So like that's my version of the film is it's
all
more
mental
of a
illness.
psychological hallucinatory thing.
Well, see, I had that thought as well, because even in the school, when the new girl comes in, Gretchen, I don't know, just sit next to the boy that you think's the cutest. Is that him thinking that,
Yeah.
or did that really happen?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so that
Yeah,
was
she actually made
you want to know what my theory about that is? So because everybody, like I was saying with the mind control, like that's just one of the subtle things that like people are doing to help Donnie. Because even like the conversation between the teachers, it's like 2 fucking words. But just Donnie Darko, I know, like they're just thinking about him and like subtly helping him all over the place.
Exactly. And I saw that scene in both movies. I remembered it from the first, the theatrical cut, and then when it was coming up, I focused on it to like, why are they speaking of him? And that was another thing. And I'm saying to myself,
I was wondering that too.
yeah, they're just sitting together and just Donnie Darko pops out. Oh yeah, I was thinking about him too, basically. You know, acknowledging it. But why?
Also, there's so many weird things. Like one of his first conversations with Gretchen, she's talking about how someone in her family went to jail.
Her dad.
Her dad
Or
went to jail.
stepdad, yeah.
And then Donnie's like, yeah, I went to jail 2 months. I accidentally burnt down a house. And he's standing in front of
Jim
Cunningham's house,
Yeah.
and this has not happened yet. And then, finding the wallet thing, even after the lesson, where it's like,
The wallet, yeah.
Ling Ling found a wallet.
I love the picture on that card. Just like extremely stereotypical buck
And
teeth.
It's so
exactly.
funny, too, that, the character that, what is her name, Rose? Or is that the mom?
Rose
mom's
is the
Rose.
mom.
I forget the gym teacher's name.
Kitty Farmer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kitty Farmer, yeah.
Like, she thinks she's so, holy
Righteous.
and righteous, but, she's just unbeknowingly racist. She's teaching shit in class that's, cultish shit, and, she's yelling at the other teacher.
And she's in charge of the exploiting these children as well.
And this guy's, her idol, and he's turned out he's a fucking pedophile.
Yeah.
So it's such, there's so many little things interwoven into the script of this movie that it's, you can point at so many little things and kind of pick and choose what message it's really trying to put forward.
I just find it funny that she's sacrificing her chance to go exploit children to help a guy get off for exploiting children, you know?
And I guess ultimately after Donnie goes, she's on that plane.
Yeah.
Not his mom.
Yeah.
And possibly his sister's not, because she's still mourning his death.
But that's a thing that was threw me off so much, because it's how does the plane, how is that plane the one that the engine falls off of?
See, that's the whole thing.
It's just
the
the whole,
timeline.
the time loop thing makes more sense.
Even the little sister, though, in the hotel room is what happened to the plane. They don't know. So they get, and all the serial numbers were burned, and nobody can figure out where this engine came
it's
from.
The rest of the plane goes through the wormhole.
Yeah.
And then the engine somehow just makes it out, and it just happens to crush Donnie's room.
Well, I think that is a part of the manipulation that's going on, It's just everything's set to correct the universe, I guess. So something interesting that the director talked about concerning Sharita Chen is that she's supposed to show a way of how a small group of kids will get most of the bullying in schools, and I guess Donnie's supposed to be protecting the innocents there with her. Yeah, I just find that pretty interesting, how she's one of those characters where she's not that involved with influencing stuff going on, Yeah.
But it does seem like there is, she might just be some kind of red herring to the situation, the grander situation of everything happening, but there is some significance to, Donnie sticking up for her and her having a crush on him.
Yeah.
And even you pointed out, she plays the angel.
Yeah, Autumn Angel.
Yeah.
In a pretty long scene,
Yeah.
I'd say there's a reason they didn't cut that,
Shut up.
It's almost teasing that if Donnie were to what do they call it in middle sex? They're like going with instead of
Yeah,
going
going
out
with,
with.
yeah.
Like
Going
if
with.
Donnie were to like go with her, like there's even like another branch to the timeline of like something else that could happen.
I guess, yeah.
I
I
don't
don't know. I
That's
haven't
a-
really thought of that,
that-
honestly.
That's kind of just what I was thinking.
But he was pretty kind to her throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. What do you make of the scene though? Why does he grab her by the earmuffs, scream?
Because I
"Everything's
think
gonna
he
be
knows
okay"?
at that moment that everything's going to be okay. Like he
Or like he
knows
says to her, "Everything's gonna get better for you."
better for you. So I guess she's going to be back on the real timeline, and things are going to get better. He was going to be gone, and I guess the world is going to be a better place. I don't know.
I feel like there's
yeah.
something more to explore there because like the one person that stood up for her is gone then. But how does everything get better for her? You know?
We'll have to go back in time. Look
Yeah.
back, figure this out now.
There's also something I wanted to talk about like back to the angel part.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you take Donnie as like a Christ-like figure, which is like kind of extreme, I guess, but she's like always around him in like significant public events, you know? Even I guess semi-private when he's like talking to the teacher about like time travel, like she's just listening in.
Mm-hmm.
Just interesting stuff where like she's always there, and she even like brushes Donnie's arm to like wake him up a little bit.
That was
Mhm.
that was one of the interpretations that I read too. Because after I watched it, I went online to look to see what other people thought about it.
Yeah.
It was totally different than what I thought about it, but they had brought that up that he was godlike and she might have been his angel.
Yeah.
There to, I mean, although
Some
it looked
kind
like
of
through most of the
disciple
movie
figure.
he's protecting her from stuff, but maybe she was there to keep him in bounds and
Yeah.
make sure things were going the way they should.
Guide him along on the path he's supposed to be
Yeah.
at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then there was that one scene when he's speaking to the science teacher, and the teacher says, I can lose my job. What was he touching on there? Was it more religion?
I think, yeah, it's just like you can't really talk about religion.
Then
like
he
that.
didn't want to give him his thoughts on that because he could lose his job.
Yeah.
There's also something with her, like they both don't want to die alone.
Mm-hmm.
Back to grandma, that everybody dies alone.
She's also like the only one that isn't frowning. She's like pretty much smiling in the like final scene with her, I guess, where it's like Mad World.
The use of music in this movie was also pretty
Yeah,
good. I
really
thought.
good soundtrack.
Yeah.
I just love 80s music.
Yeah, well,
Same.
it's good stuff.
I thought the relationship between Gretchen and Donnie was pretty interesting throughout the movie because like she doesn't really like him for him, you know. It's kind of just because everybody else in Middlesex is like a horrible person, really.
And her entire home life is pretty horrible as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Like every interaction, loving interaction with him at least, is like right after something horrible happens, like with the bullies or what have you.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she ran to him. Why she wasn't invited to the party is beyond me, but
well, maybe she was.
yeah. But then she ran to him at the party, and then they were definitely the ultimate, between teenagers, which is something they only implied in that movie because they were 16-year-olds, So that's also pretty wild.
I mean, it's pretty heavily implied, even from like just the context.
Oh,
of
yeah.
his therapy session.
Shit.
Yeah.
I also like how there's like a lot of polar opposites in this movie, like Frank and Shrita, the bullies and Gretchen, Donnie's friends and Donnie's family. You know,
I'd even say like Donnie and Jim.
yeah, I guess. I was more talking about how like certain people have like it's kind of like a Venn diagram with Donnie, you know, and like some people are on opposite sides of him, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like Donnie and Jim.
I mean, yeah, he's
pretty much
like,
polar opposites.
I
in this
guess
movie.
major antagonist almost.
Even just like, and I never ended up watching that theatrical or the extended cut version of
Yeah.
that scene where he's talking to him at the conference. But
That's one of the like scenes that just pretty much doubled in length from the original cut. Him at when he calls him the Antichrist.
Antichrist. That was
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
'Cause I think you're the fucking Antichrist.
it's almost like a weirdly like out of character scene for Donnie.
Yeah.
Like that was almost all like he was just on some kind of path type of thing, like
Yeah.
not even in control.
What do you think of Frank in this movie?
Like I said, I mean Frank is the character I probably have the most questions about. Just like why, like I guess because he is the catalyst of tragedy for like their situation at the end of the movie. But why him? Like what does the bunny represent? And like he clearly has some weird infatuation with the rabbit stuff, and that's like shown.
Donnie or him?
Frank, like at the end it's shown, I mean like he is actually the one that's painting the rabbit stuff, and he's got the weird like mask thing that he made. I don't know what it's supposed to represent. One thing that I was thinking is like almost like school shooterish type of guy.
I mean, he's not like in school or anything.
Yeah, like, I don't,
he's
I-
college,
yeah.
right?
yeah.
Get kind of implied that like he's dating Donnie's sister.
Yeah.
So
Really?
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, Because like
it comes, you sort of really figure it out at the party where she's like, "Where's Frank?" And then you see Frank is, here but out getting beer. Or,
yeah.
He's also like drives past.
Yep. Yeah, so
Donnie's
that's
house.
you find that out. The car that hit Gretchen was when he's riding home. The opening scene, you see that car leaving his house, presumably, either dropping her off early in the morning, or he stayed the night, or what have you.
Yeah.
Blowing the horn after.
Yeah, and then after
the
when she
lyrics
comes in the
that
house,
play during like they cross over
Yeah.
in the theatrical cut, it's the killing time, and in the director's cut, because it's a different song for some reason, it's two worlds collided.
Yeah.
So it's interesting use of music there.
both solid songs.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know. I still have a ton. Of
Want me to just lay out my whole
Yeah.
theory on Frank?
Go for it.
So him saying his father's name was Frank and his father before him could be a hint that he is being reborn every time the universe loops, and just getting stronger and stronger every time there. But it also could mean that his dad was Frankie Fiedler.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I don't know about that, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems
Because, like,
unless he
That's actually a
impregnated
pretty
someone.
good point, though.
Yeah.
That's a pretty
Yeah,
good
that
point.
I like.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
So-
pretty extremely rare for like
Yeah.
somebody under 18 to like have father or child. you
Yeah.
know?
It is.
It's like 1%.
Yeah.
I'd
I
say.
wouldn't say that it's coincidence that those two characters have
I
the
guess,
same
yeah.
name though.
Yeah. Now, one thing I noticed from the theatrical cut to the director's cut at the end, when the whole Mad World scene, is you see Frank, you see all his artwork, then you see Frank, but he like touches his eye. So there's definitely something there. He's like, okay, wow, this is done. I'm out of this loop now. I think he's been part of the. Some of them have memories of it, and some don't. I think this guy was in the loop the whole time.
What do you, like he was aware of it?
I think he was aware of it.
I don't know if he was. It's almost just like people feeling like aftershocks.
Yeah.
I think that he had.
I
Some
don't
aware-
think he was literally like the guy talking to Donnie the whole movie.
No, I don't think he. But I think he was after the whole thing happened and he was shot. I think he has awareness of that in his mind. The whole ending scene where he was
I mean,
shot.
I guess he was like one of the most extreme, other than Gretchen.
Yeah.
Receivers of that whole
Yeah.
trauma. I guess.
I don't know if I agree with that directly though, but I guess I could see your point.
I do think like the Frank that we see in the movie is just like a represent or manifestation of like some like force talking to Donnie.
Yeah.
When Elizabeth gets home, she hears a car honking, which is probably Frank, and it might have been the original Frank who like caused Donnie to wake up in the original loop, and that's what originally caused the divergence.
As in the horn woke him up.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because I remember like she just gets in and she like holds against the door, and she hears the horn. She smiles. That's when I was like, isn't that when he's just about to?
Yeah. Well, I think he does hear it after. Okay. So like I do think in the original loop, I guess there would have been time for him to get up after hearing that.
Yeah.
It like just loud car horn wakes him up. But and that might be why Frank gets chosen. I thought the visual effects in this movie worked pretty well, despite being a little dated. I'd say it's kind of like Jurassic Park a bit.
Yeah.
The one thing I did not like is like how the clouds moved sometimes. Like some of them just look, I don't know, just like a 50s like this is the best we can do with the effects we have.
Yeah, I'd say for the most part the VFX are like they're fine, and like also they just kind of work by being masked with like whatever type of film they shot on. So yeah, nothing like egregious,
They were
honestly.
consistent.
Yeah.
Didn't have good and bad scenes where like,
Yeah.
how did the movie do at the box office?
I think it originally flopped, but like eventually
It
just
became a
cult
deal.
classic.
Cult
it like made
classic.
its money
Yeah,
back.
but
I
it
think
also dropped at an odd time because I think that there was a tax on
two buildings got like fell down or something.
and it had something to do had something to do with aircraft hitting them or something.
Yeah.
It happened
So they
pretty
had to
big.
push it.
That's it. So it was sort of it died because of that.
9/11.
It was like a month. This movie came out like a month after 9/11.
Yeah.
So
After 9/11?
Yeah,
They
exactly.
didn't even bother holding it back and wait a little
Yeah,
while.
no, they should have, but so people are a little bit shell shocked.
people want a horror movie.
Yeah. And then you find out about plane parts hitting houses and killing.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I just
So it sort of had a
The
slow
director's
start.
cut, like I think, might have actually made more money. Funnily enough, so yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an Iron Giant situation, I guess, where like it probably has made its money back fully.
Right.
So I thought the cinematography the whole way through was just pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, it is shot well.
Yeah, for a low budget
Through and
film,
through.
basically.
And there's even, I think it's the first time we arrive at the school. The way that sequence is shot, I was saying to Jack, it's like almost like they didn't even have the budget for this shot, but somehow they just pulled it off, and it looks like that shot alone probably cost.
Well, it
them
is
the
like
budget.
4 separate shots tied
So,
together.
so that scene of them hopping out of the bus in the back, first there's, smoking a suitcase, good shit, right? Fucking cigarette. It's a fucking cigarette. But then it just sort of cuts and they're hopping out of the back of that bus. It reminded me of like Fast Times at Ridgemont High when they, jump out of the Volkswagen bus all in a cloud of pot smoke.
Yeah.
And just for some reason it just harkened me back to that.
Yeah. Speaking of the cigarettes in this movie, Jack, I noticed it, but we talked about. There's the one scene where like Ronald, who wears the Ronald Mania shirt, is Hulk Hogan, which I thought was funny. But
I thought that was a Ronald Reagan joke.
no, I think his name is Ronald. I don't know. Maybe it was a Reagan joke.
Yeah,
but
so they were pretty hip on. We'll go back to the politics of this movie, but they were pretty
he
hip on that.
smokes the cigarette when they're like standing waiting for the bus. He takes one puff, throws it down, and then asks his friend for another cigarette.
I really liked the scene when he's in the principal's office. It's like a great use of selective framing where you don't know that Kitty's in the thing until he rephrases what he said. I just love shit like that.
Told me to take the card and insert it into my
anus. And you're like, whoa.
I like how the dad is just like.
The dad, every time somebody in the family says something, he's just always laughing to himself.
I mean, he just doesn't care because he's fucking
give a
like
shit.
just, like rich, pretty much guy. That
I mean, while the two of them are bickering at the dinner table, the sister and
He's covering the daughter's ear.
Yeah.
the daughter's just like, "What the fuck, ass?"
Yeah.
And he just starts laughing. I'm like, "That's beautiful. I
he just
like that."
submitted to it, I guess. Well, there's even like the scene that we were talking about in the director's cut where he's talking to Donnie. He says, "People used to think I was crazy, but you want to know what you tell those people? Fuck off." I also like when he's like kind of agreeing with Kitty when they ban the book. He's just like subtly nodding until the wife chimes in, I guess.
Yeah.
That was the beginning around the table. It was kind of like, tell me you're a Republican without telling me you're a Republican.
Yeah.
When they were getting on who caucus.
Yeah.
But even then, like the family still loves each other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is separate from, you discuss it, but doesn't change who you're with,
Then, it's also a nod to women's rights. Like, what do you mean my husband is going to...
Yeah.
It's like more about establishing the characters than it is like making a statement about politics.
Politics, right.
Yeah. I thought it did that very well.
Yeah.
This movie established characters pretty well, I thought,
Yeah, this movie just like feels at times like a lot of other movies, not in a bad way. Like oddly, kind of got like a Home Alone vibe while watching it. I know we had just watched that video, but I definitely was thinking Halloween. At least like cinematography wise, kind of looks like it.
It's definitely all those coming of age movies of the 80s. It definitely had a lot of those elements throughout the whole thing.
I thought E.T. was like another good.
Yeah. See, and I, seeing that scene, it's funny because even though it was years later, it brought me to Stranger Things. But even that, in that first season, reminded me a lot of E.T.
And I don't know
with the bicycles
if
and
this movie is like you're meant to feel like those movies because it's trying to like interpret them or like visually flip them for you, or if it's just like, oh, this director just like grew up on these movies and this heavily
which I'm sure he pretty much did. I mean, he's pretty young when he did this.
Yeah. I think this was his first like feature film.
Yeah. Wow.
One hit wonder.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
there's
don't know
also
too
like
much about him.
talk about Back to the Future a lot. Even like the movie takes place in 1988.
Yeah, and like they show like
88
Evil
Meltdown.
Dead and stuff and Temptation of Christ.
Yeah, I really liked all of the themes in this movie, but like one like undercurrent type of theme was like sexual judgment. Because the whole like Smurf conversation, the whole thing about antiseptics. There's also like, a scene it gets extended on in the director's cut, but like because the book got banned, the teacher replaces it with Watership Down, and like Donnie's like falling asleep watching the movie, and like when he wakes up after the teacher asks a question about the rabbits, he's like, "Why should we care?
Yeah,
They're just horny," and They don't have any history. They're not humans. So it's just interesting his switch from like thinking that if you can't have sex, then you aren't like human, to like if the only thing that you can do is have sex, then you aren't human either. So it's just a nice switch up there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like his last conversation with himself before sacrificing himself.
Yeah,
You know?
before the realization of having to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
He says the bunnies like don't even know that they're alive. And it's kind of something of with how like people around him are like being manipulated into helping him, and like he sees them like following the paths. So yeah, it's kind of just like
and it's even like kind of tie back to the conversation he has with the science teacher, where like Donnie is so sure of like set paths and everything, and the teacher's like, oh, but like free will and choice, but it's like you don't even know that like you're playing into this.
yeah, he can't say that like he saw the path.
Yeah,
I guess other than to the therapist. I really like how he like goes that whole stretch talking to the therapist about it, and then like he realizes you can't say that he found a gun, you know.
Yeah. But he does go as far as saying that
He's like pretty
that
liberal
Frank is
with the
going to kill.
therapist.
I mean, he also says he broke the water main and burned the house
Oh,
down.
yeah, he definitely.
Well, under hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
But Frank is going to kill. But we didn't know who Frank was going to kill.
Yeah, I don't know. That question's a little bit like that he like even knew that, you know.
What do you mean?
Like, because we never get Frank saying that like he was gonna kill Gretchen.
No.
You know, it's just interesting that he knew that. I wrote down like a bunch of details, just like appearances of rabbits in the movie. So the first song in the movie is "The Killing Moon" by the band Echo and the Bunnymen. There's a Polaroid in the background of one scene where a young Donnie is dressed as a rabbit for Halloween. And the bullies and Gretchen waiting for the bus scene, a Volkswagen rabbit car passes by. There's also a stuffed rabbit toy next to a chair in the Darko house.
Yeah, I mean, definitely rabbits and bunnies used as some for maybe the absurdness of life and death.
Yeah, the watership down scenes in the director's cut are pretty good, except for Drew Barrymore speaking a lot in them. Just I love details like that where like there's clearly something going on there, I guess.
Yeah.
I really like how scenes in this movie kind of just like take breaks, you know, where like all the therapist scenes could kind of work together as one large scene. Cause
He's even wearing the same shirt in a majority of them, if not all.
I didn't notice that. But even like the dinner scenes, like Donnie with his friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting like structure for a movie.
See, what I was trying to figure out, though, like, and you bring up those scenes and that he had the same shirt on. Was it him coming back over and over
I think
again?
it was.
Trying to get it correct?
Because like he says that he met Gretchen the second day. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You know?
Also just like multiple hypnotherapy. Like I don't think they would go back into it after like a weird ending. Both times. 3 times I think they did it.
I thought it was interesting that you mentioned to me in the director's cut, there's a scene where the therapist pretty much just admits that she agrees with Donnie and like she just believes him, but then like also the phone call still happens.
Yeah.
Where she like calls the house.
Yeah.
She's like,
she tells him that he's taking placebos.
I feel like that's like the type of scene where it's like the director makes that scene to kind of just fuck with you, and then I guess I see why it's cut though.
Donnie Darko's name is like Dawn and Dark. Donnie Darko's Halloween costume is because of the illustration in the book where you learn about like the solar plexus thing. It's like a skeleton. Donnie asks the teacher, what do I tell the other kids about you? And she says, tell them everything's going to be just fine. And then Donnie repeats that to the clown guy in Frank's car. So kind of different.
I mean, he kind of mentioned, he says that to a few different people.
He did, because that's what he said.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah,
he
I
said
didn't
that to Sharita also.
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh, and that's the scene directly after.
Yeah.
I just realized that. That's why I fucking love this movie.
Yeah, he does pretty much say that. He does say to her, though, like, everything's going to get better for you. But it is, you know, an interpolation, I guess, of that same...
Yeah, I'm pretty certain he said something like that to Gretchen.
Yeah. I do feel like he does say it to her as well, or just to someone else.
You know, what I find interesting also is that through the movie, so you see when his mother is getting in the van, he hugs and kisses her, and then he hugs and kisses his sister.
Director's cut, by the way.
But before the end of this movie, he sort of made peace with all of them. You know, okay, he had his moment with Gretchen. He did what he had to do there, or you know, sort of what he wanted to do there. He hugged and kissed his mother and his sister. Then he had that moment with his father again, director's cut. And then at the end, he goes in after the party and he kisses his older sister on the head and basically says goodbye to her. And then he goes, and then you know, the inevitable happens.
I think it's more impactful in the theatrical cut, just
Yep,
seeing the sister.
I guess, but you know, he sort of made his peace with everybody and moved on, and You know, which is the other thing is, was this a time travel movie, this and that, or was it just a suicide?
I'm even thinking like to like the suicide point, like the jet engine falling on him could just be like the weight of everything finally collapsing on him.
Interesting.
Yeah. Even that little kid at the end, he got crushed by a plane, blah, blah, blah. But that could have just been a kid. Hey, that was my neighbor, Donnie Darko, and his family found him dead in his room.
Yeah.
And they're devastated. Did the plane really happen? Or is it just a metaphor?
Yeah, this is just such a great movie because of, you could look at everything in this as metaphor.
The fat guy is one of the FAA guys, just to show that, like, Donnie's being watched because they know something with the engine, like, cannot be, so.
You see him in the original FAA scene. He's in the background, but then you see him 2 or 3 more times throughout the movie with that red suit on. He's at the party. He's at the park. There's a fat guy watching us.
The marker on the refrigerator whiteboard is never replaced, but messages still appear on it. I'd say that there's definitely, like, intention there. When Donnie is burning down Jim Cunningham's house, we see there are 2 deer heads flanking his portrait.
Portrait of Sean Penn.
It's just him.
I know, it looks like Sean.
And then later in the movie, when Kitty Farmer, like, wakes up, we see a painting of, like, 2 deer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just, like, the people protecting his dungeon, like, are just, like, meaningless to him. And just, like, I guess also his prey.
Yeah. I wonder if there's anything to the fact that the kid from the video shows up at the conference as well.
Yeah,
or
which
if
is
they just
weird.
reused the actor.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just, like, some actor issues in this movie for me, too, where just, like, people in Donnie's class are just, like, very young,
And then there's, like, Seth Rogen.
Yeah. Yeah. The first ever movie with him.
Really?
Yeah.
I had a feeling that was like one of his first movies.
Grandma Death seems to be involved with, like, planning the setup where Frank kills Gretchen because, like, she's there so he can swerve.
I also think there's something to the, like, she's also in a time loop. She just does the same thing every day until it ultimately impacts.
Until it pays off.
Yeah. My favorite quote of the movie is, "I think you're the fucking Antichrist."
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Any other favorite?
I mean, I mentioned already the Smurf scene. It's just fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
Little bit of
that was a
dialogue.
pretty funny scene. That conversation, which again, it brought me back to
It's so
college
logical.
days. So,
All right, Papa Smurf didn't create Smurfette.
I like the therapist. I don't want to fuck my family.
Yeah,
that
that's
was
great, too.
that was a pretty good.
Starts,
Scene.
like, almost
That's
jerking off in the
disgusting.
fucking therapist office.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
My least favorite scene is the Drew Barrymore extended speech.
Yeah.
What are we teaching these children? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's not what she says, but it's just bad acting there.
I don't want to badmouth her, but she was pretty terrible in this movie as an actress.
She's also up against, like, a lot of great actors.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
said to Jack, like, she's kind of fine.
Yeah.
But I get there's such a cast in this movie where it's like even like the no names are just like good character actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She, maybe this was her alcohol phase.
I guess I don't know because she, she was
She
behind
had-
this movie 100%. She, the executive producer and everything. So it is what it is. But they had to put her in it, I guess.
Did these guys ever make another movie?
The director,
Yeah,
unfortunately,
and they're just not good.
it's just horrible.
Are they anything like this?
I don't know. I was just so bored. It's like one of those movies where, like, it tries to talk about everything, but, like, in that process, it just ends up talking about nothing.
Yeah,
You know?
it's almost like the Antichrist version of this movie.
I guess.
I mean, this movie talks about a lot of shit and it somehow pulls it all off.
Yeah.
I guess I could see where you overbake it 9 times out of 10, and this is your lightning in a bottle.
And my favorite scene in this movie is definitely the whole Jim Cunningham assembly. Director's cut makes it a lot better, but even in the theatrical cut, it's just great. Except for, like, only in the theatrical cut you can hear people, like, the crowd, like, getting mad. And I don't know, it just sounded, like, pretty bad to me.
Yeah.
And it's all, like, removed in the director's cut. Just like, who the hell do you think you are? Guy with a southern accent for some reason.
Yeah, I guess they're in like Washington.
It's just Virginia.
It's a suburb in Virginia.
The red.
Just like it's funny because like that was the only southern accent guy in the whole movie.
Yeah. My favorite scene when they arrive to Grandma Death's house and just everything that plays out there. Like a good culmination of a lot of things.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool how they set that up because Seth Rogen and the other guy, they're in the why are they in the basement? But then you remember back to the father's conversation. Oh, yeah, she used to have this, gems, and she was known for that. And kids used to go there and try to rob her house and such. So here they are, in there trying to rob the house.
Yeah.
But here she is. She's the old woman living at the end of a block. It's still a dirt road.
This seems like the most important road.
And everybody drives through this.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I do believe in the it's her universe.
Yeah.
Thing.
That's why I believe that too. It makes sense.
My final rating. So I have 3 ratings because there's different versions of the movie. So the theatrical cut I have is a 9 out of 10. The director's cut a 7.5, and the version I've edited together in my head is a 10 out of 10.
Wow, he's going to re-edit this movie. You think you can get access to scenes that were further cut?
I mean, they're pretty bad quality from what I've seen.
I am going to go with an 8 out for Donnie Darko.
For the theatrical, I would say also 8 out of 10 for myself. I'm not going to rate the other one because it was the way I watched it was almost like source material, So, but I enjoyed it as well. I got to be honest with you, and it made you think more of the theatrical cut. That's why I'm going to say source material.
I'm going to give it a solid 6 because I was confused half the time.
It is a confusing movie, and
I do feel like upon a rewatch, my rating would change.
Yeah, same here. Now that we've talked about it, probably.
See, watching both of them definitely helped me in coming out with a different rating for it.
I have 2 ratings. I'm going to give it a 4.5 because I just really didn't get it.
Didn't connect with
I
you.
didn't enjoy it, and not that it made me confused. It wasn't entertaining for me. And like I said, that would be my coming from the perspective of instead of watching the movie from the outside, looking at the events that are happening, I just automatically assumed that this was the events that were living in his head through the whole movie, never trying to get outside that. So to me, it was just a depressing movie about a psychologically ill kid. I will give it a 10 plus on its creating a conversation after the fact. Because just hearing everyone, and their opinions and different scenes and everything and how they felt about it, I think in that you got to give any movie that can create that much talk and buzz, you give it credit for that. I just didn't get it, on my initial watch of it so many years ago. My second watch of it didn't make it any better because I still had that same mental attitude. I wasn't looking for anything different. But hearing everybody's different views on it, got to be awesome just to be able to create that.
Yeah, there's even I don't know if this was intentionally stuff that happened, but even having a director's cut, it's just more fuel to the fire of just what is real, what is,
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the fucking director thinks that it's time travelers messing up the timeline, but I don't even want to get into that because it's just weird. But I'd say it's one of those movies that just makes me feel like most movies could just be a short film, just with how dense this one is, and it just shows you actual potential of movies.
Yeah. Okay. Next time on Cape Critiquers, we will be watching Batman Begins from Christopher Nolan. Not next week, week after. So we'll be off for a week. Yeah. All right. We will see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
I was born in the darkness. Follow me, Donnie. Wrong movie.
Shut up.
What is the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log? Wake up!